So to kick us off, I just want to say welcome. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Debbie Brown. I'm the president of Colorado Business Roundtable, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to this conversation and briefing, particularly around stackable credential pathways and the steering committee that's now been formed on this. Many of you are partners with Colorado Business Roundtable, or you might be involved with Colorado Succeeds. This is a joint briefing that we've put together to really make sure that our employers that we represent understand this critical issue going forward, and also as a chance to receive your feedback as we want to represent your interests on the steering committee and on some of these pathways as well. So welcome today. Before I introduce Ruth Ann, I want to give a little bit of a framework of why Colorado Business Roundtable is involved and some of our partnership with Colorado Succeeds. And then I'd love for Katie from Colorado Succeeds to say a few words as well. So what we know from our employers is that workforce remains the #1 issue in terms of really finding success going forward in Colorado's economy. So what has happened, as many of you might know, through the 1330 task force, which Scott LeBand and I both served on, which seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. There were key recommendations that were made to the legislature to consider in terms of workforce innovation, and in particularly around industry alignment. So what you'll hear from Ruth Ann today is a little bit of what's transacted from the 1330 task force and how it's gone down to now through the legislature, through the signing from the governor, and now is in the implementation phase. So it's an exciting time to talk about stackable credential pathways. So before I get too far in the weeds, because that's really Ruth Ann's job today, I want to throw it over to Katie with Colorado Succeeds to give a little bit of a welcome as well. And we've always appreciated, as you all know, our ability to be allies in this space to make sure that the lens of industry is always at the forefront as well. So Katie, say hello for us.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And thank you all for having me today and for being here as well. My name is Katie Zabak, as she said, and I am the new Vice President of Policy here at Colorado Succeeds. I've been here for almost exactly a month, but I am not new to Succeeds completely. I've been working with them as a consultant on a lot of the work that they did on the task force and the subsequent legislation, and then also previously worked at the Department of Higher Education as their Senior Director of Policy. So I come to this from the higher education side, and I am so excited about the opportunity to engage business in these conversations in such a meaningful way, because I think it's been one of the pieces that's been missing in improving our system of higher education. It never ceases to amaze me how we have a system of higher education that is not preparing our students for the modern day needs, and it's just not built to meet students where they are today. Your average student comes in and out of the system. They might want to come in and reskill and upskill. They might not be able to just get a degree through a seamless pathway like we typically think about it. And so we don't have a structure that supports that. And we also know that business is changing constantly. So the skills that students need looks different, and we need business at the table to be talking about to academia about what kind of skills and competencies they need our students to come out with. So I am really excited about the work that Ruth Ann is going to do with this legislation and with this task force. And I'm so thankful that all of you are here, because you are a critical piece that has been missing in the past. And having your voice at the table is going to be very important. So with that, I will pass it back over to Debbie and look forward to continuing to work with folks going forward.
Great, thank you, Katie. Appreciate you being on. And just to also reiterate, Colorado Business Roundtable represents employers that also include academia. Many institutions of higher ed are involved in COBRT, as well as the private sector and government and nonprofit leaders. So we see this as a yes and. This certainly protects and solidifies our support for traditional institutions of higher ed, but also brings a little bit of a different conversation in terms of creating new pathways for our institutions of higher ed and for the business community to be involved. So we're excited about that collaboration. So at this point, I'm going to introduce Ruth Ann. She's going to provide about a 10-minute briefing for you with all the specifics. And then after that, we will have time for specific questions and feedback on kind of next steps and ways that you can get involved as well. So here we go. Appreciate Ruth Ann being here. She's the Director of Credential Pathways and Prior Learning Initiatives for the Colorado Department of Higher Education. A little bit about Ruth Ann. Before she joined CDHE, she served as the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the Community College of Denver since 2019. She earned her bachelor's degree in Spanish from the University of Idaho and her master's degree in Spanish linguistics from the University of Colorado at Boulder. She taught Spanish for 13 years at 2-year and 4-year institutions before moving into higher ed administration. Ruth Ann is currently finishing her PhD in Higher Education Student Affairs Leadership at University of Northern Colorado. In her free time, she enjoys traveling, reading, and spending time with her husband and their 14-year-old twins, which I don't know if you're going to have much free time now that you've got this new mandate, Ruth Ann, to make this big change for Colorado. But welcome, Ruth Ann. We'll let you take it away for the briefing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very honored to be here today. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're right. Although I did just submit my dissertation draft to my committee, so I felt like Thanksgiving was fully lived for the first time in a number of years. So thank you so much for letting me be here today to share with you a little bit. I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see what I am sharing. We're good. All right, wonderful. So Senate Bill 22-192 is the direct result of that 1330 task force, as Debbie mentioned, and the recommendations around deeper, better alignment between K-12, our post-secondary, and our workforce partners, right? To ensure that the education that students are getting in the state of Colorado is meaningful, relevant, and providing them the momentum necessary to move throughout their career. So specifically, the legislation that created my position that I am in today at the Colorado Department of Higher Ed directs the department to lead a process to create a framework to evaluate the value of different non-degree credentials. So different non-degree credentials can be industry certifications, professional licensures, post-secondary certificates offered at the undergraduate level, also apprenticeship certificates, right? Any of these non-degree credentials that can stack into either associate's degrees or bachelor's degrees, and that are really designed to prepare students for their next step on their career journey. It also mandates the creation of 10 total pathways across 5 high-value industries. So two pathways each across 5 high-value industries, as kind of pointed out in our talent pipeline report, either the 2021 or the 2022 talent pipeline report. Excuse me, sorry, I have a very itchy mouse. Let's see, there we go. Sorry about that. In addition, there were some dollars, some pools of funding that were appropriated through Senate Bill 192, creating a grant program for students at community colleges, area technical colleges, to support them on their pathway if they've declared any non-degree certificates or are participating in any apprenticeships or non-credit experiences. There's also $450,000 over the next 2 years to all of our institutions of higher ed as they are working to fill in the gaps. As Katie mentioned, right, we've got some opportunities to better align our curriculum and how and what we're delivering to what the industries are telling us is needed in terms of skills, knowledge, and competencies for our students. So $450,000 over the next 2 years for institutions of higher ed to invest in better aligning their curriculum, potentially building out new certificates and new programming to meet the needs of these industries. And then $228,000 over the next 2 years to the Colorado Community College system, specifically for staff support and program development, again, to shore up and make sure that we have if we've got, for instance, an industry certification or an apprenticeship experience, how do we take the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are wrapped up in those certifications and crosswalk them to the curriculum in the Common Course numbering system across Colorado, such that students can come in with credit for prior learning and maintain their momentum toward their next stackable credential as they're moving along their pathway and out into their next level career, their career move. And then one more additional piece, there was $800,000 in this legislation for Colorado Department of Education to support an adult education and literacy grant program. With regard to the timeline, over these next 2 years, we are going to be building out across 3 of those high value industries, 6 pathways in year 1. And we're also then going to be in year 2 building out the additional 4 stackable credentials across the next 2 high value industries. Now, there's nothing saying that we can't begin the work across all 5 industries this year, which is our intention. But a really important first piece of that is having our steering committee develop and adopt a high quality credential evaluation framework so that we know that the credentials, those stackable credentials, be they industry certifications, apprenticeship experiences, post-secondary certificates, that they are of high value and they're fully stackable into that next level, and that next level certificate is also high value and really aligned with what the industry is saying are skills and competencies that are needed. We've taken a look at that talent pipeline report, the 2021 talent pipeline report, which really called out behavioral health, healthcare, education as critical industries, right? And for Colorado to look at, to build out, to address some of those challenges and barriers to access. Because we have such high need. And the legislation, so as I mentioned before, this legislation really requires that we base our industry selections on those high value, high need, high growth industries that were highlighted in the 2021 talent pipeline report, and that hopefully will be validated in our 2022 talent pipeline report. And I think you all know, right, that the talent pipeline report's top jobs need to meet 3 criteria. They need to have projected high annual openings, above average growth rate projected over the next 10 years, and a good wage, right? Be that either tier 1, that living hourly wage threshold that can support a family of 3 with 1 adult working. Or a tier 2 high quality job, which provides a living hourly wage threshold that can support 1 individual. And so, as I mentioned before, behavioral health, healthcare, and education were called out as critical industries, really needing some attention and some support over the next few years. And then the 1330 task force, as Debbie mentioned earlier, recommended the development of stackable credential pathways in these high need, high demand, high value fields. And they mentioned nursing and healthcare, aerospace, technology, programming, and teaching. So with regard to the structure that we are looking at in terms of how we're going to build out these pathways, we've got a state leadership team that consists of several leaders in the Colorado Department of Higher Ed and the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. And then we just had our first convening of our Stackable Credential Pathways Steering Committee. And this is, again, a steering committee that's designed to really help set the stage and allow us to set our goals and objectives and help these leadership teams, these industry leadership teams, move forward and develop pathways that work for all of our earners in the state. We will have 5 industry-specific leadership teams, and these industry-specific leadership teams They're really going to be focused on, they're going to consist of stakeholders, stakeholder experts who can provide that deep understanding of the current landscape, the opportunities and the challenges that exist within each path industry, as they're very different. If you take, for instance, the behavioral health industry in comparison to the cybersecurity industry, there are real access issues at the front end of the behavioral health pipeline that need to be addressed. Meanwhile, the cybersecurity industry pipeline, there's some fantastic in non-formal educational opportunities that exist in that cyberspace that haven't yet been incorporated into our educational pipeline. So this is an opportunity for industry experts to come together, industry leads, post-secondary, K-12 students who have gone through this and experienced some of the benefits, some of the challenges. Our hope is to get those folks together in a room, not to reinvent all of the fantastic work that has been going on over the last couple of years in these spaces, but to really build on that and to create pathways with multiple on-ramps for K-12 students, on-ramps for adult learners, on-ramps potentially for people who have been involved in our justice system. What kinds of on-ramps exist, and then what kinds of off-ramps to different careers along that career pathway exist? The hope here is that those subject matter expert kind of subgroups can come together, take a look at what non-degree credentials exist in these spaces, evaluate those non-degree credentials for their and determine that they are high value, and then figure out how we can make those credentials, how can we crosswalk those credentials to what exists potentially in the post-secondary space already, so that credit for prior learning can be awarded, and students aren't wasting time or losing momentum or needing to repeat, but can be taking their lived and work experience and move forward faster toward their next level credential. I hope that makes sense, and I'm looking forward to questions in a few minutes. So in terms of what success will look like, right, we want to make sure that these pathways are meeting all of our earner learners in the state of Colorado where they are and moving them forward, providing them a path. We want to ensure that these pathways have multiple on-ramps from work and off-ramps to work, whatever that next level work, career, top job opportunity is. We want to ensure that the momentum is built in those portable, transferable experiences for learner earners, that they're validated and they exist in our ecosystem in ways that they currently don't. And we want to ensure that we're doing these things so that our clear pathways are closing the economic opportunity and equity gaps that we know exist across Colorado in our rural areas and for our historically disadvantaged and underserved populations in the traditional higher education space. We want to ensure that we're increasing those skills, competencies, and credentials that are informed by industry, as Katie mentioned, right? We want to disrupt that disconnect. We want our industry partners to be telling us what is needed so that we're building those into the educational opportunities for our learner earners in the state. And none of this is going to be meaningful if we can't find a way to make it effective and informative and publicly available, right? That it's not something that lives on a website, but rather something that high school counselors and that workforce centers and that employers can get behind and see themselves using for their employee development as well. And of course, I'm sure that there are other definitions of success, and I look forward to incorporating those as well in our work. And I think that this is our opportunity here. I know Debbie asked me to join you today to let you know, like, what do we need, right? What we need, as Katie mentioned, as Debbie mentioned, is that industry representation. Industry representation on our Stackable Credential Pathways Steering Committee, that overarching umbrella steering committee that will help guide this work. And then also, if you or somebody in your organization or somebody in your network is a subject matter expert on one of these industry specific areas, if they would be willing to serve on one of these industry leadership teams, we would so welcome that opportunity. We're looking for our subject matter experts to help build out the best and best informed pathways. And I do have a link here to the participant recommendation form. You could always also just send me an email. But I'm looking forward today to hearing questions, hearing recommendations, suggestions, and getting some feedback also on what we're calling our 5 industry buckets. And I did just want to take 1 second, Debbie, if I may, and say I recognize that IT is an industry, right? But IT as an industry is so big, right? And we wanted to make sure that we were moving just a level down to ensure that we were building pathways in the spaces that we're hearing, cybersecurity and developer, for instance, where we're hearing there's significant need, there's significant demand and growth.